My name is Michael Spinar, and I'm the Lake Michigan Lakewide Action and Management Plan, or LAMP program coordinator for Indiana. On behalf of the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, I'd like to welcome everyone to the 7th in a series of 10 free webinars on topics anticipated to be of interest to the watershed protection and restoration community. Just so everyone is aware, this session is being recorded. When the time comes for today's question and answer session, you will be able to unmute yourself via the microphone icon. For a lot of people, it appears in the upper right-hand corner, but it may also appear near the bottom of your screen. If you would prefer, there's a chat window accessed via the comment bubble along the edge of the screen adjacent to that. And you may type your questions in there. The webinar series is anticipated to run from now through February to coincide with the development of the 2020 to 2024 Lake Michigan LAMP. Just like the forthcoming LAMP, this webinar series is targeted toward a broad audience, including watershed groups, MS4 coordinators, environmental organizations, land trusts, and members of the public. Each webinar is scheduled for approximately 60 minutes unless otherwise noted, from 1 to 2 p.m. Central or 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Please be sure to refer to items Lake Michigan Webinar Series webpage, which will be posted in the chat window shortly for the latest scheduling updates and recordings of past presentations. Now, it's my very great pleasure to introduce our initial kickoff speaker for today's webinar. Dr. Elizabeth Hinchey Molloy is the Science Monitoring, Evaluation, and Reporting Section Chief for US EPA's Great Lakes National Program Office. She's going to be providing an overview of the Lake Michigan LAMP and several other lake-wide initiatives today.
All right, thank you, Michael. I'm happy to be here with you today. I work really closely with Michael on the Lake Michigan LAMP work, and it was really fun to pull this slide deck together for you all today. So I'm going to give an overview of work that's done under the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement in Lake Michigan, and also bringing in a couple other water quality agreement programs and EPA programs that we use to assess lake condition. So I'm going to give you a high-level overview, and I'm going to really step back for this first slide and just talk in general about, our shared waters with Canada, because our work on the Lakewide Action and Management Plans that I'll be describing is really nested under the origins of this Boundary Waters Treaty. So if you look at this map here, you can really see that the United States and Canada share a really expansive set of boundary waters, these border waters, if you will. And the proportion of shared waters that our two countries have, it's really unparalleled in the world. The boundary waters encompass over 300 lakes and rivers across and through our shared border, moving from the Bay of Fundy to the east to the Straits of Juan de Fuca out in the west, and up to the Beaufort Sea in the north. There are over 10,000 miles of coastline in the Great Lakes, and again, we have this border running, through the whole Great Lakes area there. And when we think of the Great Lakes, it's also to keep in mind that the basin or the watershed of the Great Lakes is also part of the same territory. So that's what's shown here in all this tan color of this diagram. And this basin itself is so big that it's larger than several European countries. And economically, if it was a standalone area, it would comprise something like, I think, the 8th largest economy in the world. So this is a really important, economic engine for our countries and for the world globally. So because of this, vast shared territory and the fact that it, was right on the borders, there was a Boundary Waters Treaty that was signed in 1909. So this was back when William H. Taft was president, and it was actually ratified with Great Britain, because at the time, Great Britain still held dominion over Canada. So this treaty included a requirement that neither country should cause water pollution in these waters, which would cause injury or health to the property of the other country. And in order to manage these boundary waters and implement this treaty, the International Joint Commission was formed and helped settle water disputes between the two countries. And in 1988, this International Joint Commission expanded their agreement to include protecting covered watersheds in addition to the waters and things like migratory fishes and fish habitat. So we've got the International Joint Commission, helping to deal with, water management and water management disputes and fisheries management across this full swath of boundary waters. But as some of you are aware, back in the 60s and 70s, the Great Lakes were getting some very bad attention because of how polluted they were. You know, the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. You know, there was just visible pollution, visible oil slicks on the surface of these waters, and that really prompted a big environmental movement, and that resulted in, you know, kind of a furthering our commitment to protect waters with Canada by implementing and signing for the first time a Great Lakes and Canada U.S. water quality agreement. And the goal of this agreement was to restore and maintain the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of these waters. So getting into, you know, more, you know, ecosystem management of water quality itself. So moving away from just the boundary water disputes over, you know, using the water and polluting another country's water, but getting into, you know, developing plans to restore conditions. So you can see that the first agreement for this was signed in 1972. It was done when Richard Nixon was president and Pierre Trudeau was prime minister, and it really focused, you know, again on these egregious, you know, pollution impacts that we were seeing in Lake Erie and elsewhere. You know, the phosphorus loading that was really, you know, causing problems, the visible oil slicks, the visible pollution, and you can see over the years in this timeline, you know, the agreement's been amended, modified, and some supplements have been released to, I think, dial in the focus a bit on some issues and expand it on others. So you can see in 1978, it was expanded again to look at other persistent toxic substances, so looking more at other sources of chemical pollution. It brought in the concept of using an ecosystem approach to managing these lakes between the two countries. In 1983, that's when a supplement came out that, you know, actually identified some phosphorus reduction strategies to deal with the need to reduce phosphorus loads. In 1987, that was a big year for the programs that Michael and I work on, because not only did it introduce the concepts of areas of concern and developing remedial action plans to clean up the most polluted areas in the Great Lakes, but it also brought to bear the concept of, you know, our country should be working together to produce Lakewide management plans to restore conditions. So that's when the LAMPs came into development. And then most recently in 2012, that was when the agreement was most recently amended. And I'll show you on the next slide some of the new enhancements that it was added to cover some additional issues, you know, new things that had come onto the scene since the 1972 agreement was first signed, things like invasive species. So let's take a quick look there. So this slide shows that the kind of the 10 issue areas of the water quality agreement. We call them annexes for those of us that work on these in our day-to-day positions, but they're listed here, and you can see most of them were included in earlier versions, but as I mentioned, there were some new ones. So the annexes are areas of concern, lakewide management, which is the focus of our call today, chemicals of mutual concern, nutrients, ballast water, aquatic invasive species, which was new, a specific focus on habitat and native species, which was new, groundwater, climate change impacts, which was new, and this overarching science annex, which I'll describe a little bit. And so, you know, I know this is a Lake Michigan focused talk. Lake Michigan is actually the only Great Lake that doesn't share a Canadian border, but, you know, we you know, implement, you know, these annexes in Lake Michigan. We just don't do them binationally as we do for the other 4 Great Lakes. But that's what, you know, I work very closely with states and tribes in Lake Michigan. So shown here on this slide are what we call the general objectives for the water quality agreement. And these are very aspiring, you know, high-level goals that represent the desired end state for water quality in the Great Lakes. So you can see they touch on things like making sure the lakes are a source of safe, high-quality drinking water. We should be able to swim in the lakes. We should be able to, you know, fish and eat fish from the lakes without worrying about contamination. You know, it's a lot of, you know, the lake should be free from all of these impacts. And, you know, the bottom one listed here, this be free from other impacts to water quality, that was left kind of very general on purpose, because I think the framers of this 2012 agreement wanted to, you know, have some clauses in there that would allow us to, you know, work binationally to address new issues that would potentially arise after 2012. So just, you know, like the invasive species, you know, was a new thing, you know, in the 80s that we were able to work on, you know, kind of, you know, having this catch-all in here for, you know, unknown things at the time it was signed that may become impacts in the future. So that's the be free from other to be identified impacts on water quality. So if we are successful in meeting the general objectives for the agreement, a demonstration of that success would be to have, you know, those goals met in all 5 lakes. And that's really, you know, our work here. So I'll be talking about, you know, programs underway that, you know, bring resources to bear in Lake Michigan. But you should know that, for the other 4 lakes as well, there are, similar partnerships and work underway to help achieve these general objectives for all 5 lakes. So Lakewide management is the annex, that Michael and I work on, and really it kind of takes what I like to call a satellite view, if you will, which is what this shows. This is an image from the International Space Station looking down on Lake Michigan and Lake Superior. And what we do is we look at a variety of different water quality issues at that lake-wide scale. And we try to leverage work that's being done within each Great Lake Basin to improve water quality conditions. So we try to, to meet the agreement commitments, we focus on big picture questions like, are we achieving the goals of the agreement in each lake? What actions can we identify at a lake-wide scale to further restore and protect each Great Lake? And what additional research could be done to help us better understand the lakes, help us better manage the lakes so that we can be more effective in our programming. So I'll be talking a little bit about the ways we do that in this annex. So the first one, and a very important one, is talking about lake-wide action and management plans. So these are multi-agency plans that we develop. They are ecosystem-based management strategies for the lakes. They look at impacts of air stressors, land, water, biotic stressors, any stressors that could be having a detrimental impact on Great Lakes water quality. So another way of thinking about the LAMPs is that they're a strategic action plan for addressing the major lake stressors such as chemical contamination, nutrients, invasive species, and for ensuring that water quality is able to support native species and habitat. So I'll be going through some examples of how the LAMPs address things on a basin-wide scale, and you'll be hearing from Michael in a bit about how those actions are carried out at the regional level in the state of Indiana. So, and again, we have LAMPs developed for all 5 lakes. We strive to get them out and updated on a 5-year cycle. We're a little bit, off of our plan. Ideally, we'll have one coming out per year, but actually, they take a little bit longer to get reviewed and approved before finalization. But as you can see, we move through a cycle. So we are anticipating having our Lake Michigan LAMP released for public comment later this year, and that'll be, the 5-year action plan for our lake. And I keep saying we, and I tell you about how Michael and I have been working together, and we do that through what we call the Lake Michigan Partnership. So each lake has a partnership that's developed of a team of resource managers from federal programs, state programs, tribal coastal management programs, and we all work together under the agreement to develop the LAMPs and do some other reporting that I'll talk about in a bit. But I think I have on this next table here, a list of our Lake Michigan Partnership agency members. So, we are a team of resource managers from, I said, all these different organizations. We are 21 member agencies strong. We have really nice federal representation. We've got members from different agencies within the states. And it's been really great to have good tribal representation. And most recently through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, domestic tribal programs, we've actually been able to bring some additional tribal representation into our LAMP. So we're really happy to see the list of participating tribes grow as well. So I mentioned that we have reporting commitments under the agreement. So I mentioned the 5-year LAMPs that we develop. We also have been developing annual updates that are designed to report out to the public on progress being made under our action plan. So we have, kind of glossy 4-pagers of highlights of all the different work, to address the different threats that we release annually to the public. And we also have a very formal reporting process that we do through some of the governance of the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement to what's called the Great Lakes Executive Committee. And we do that, twice a year through our meetings with them. And then once every 3 years, information on progress under the Lakewide Management Annex is reported out through the progress report of the parties. And that goes to the International Joint Commission and to the public to review work under all the annexes. And these reports can be found at our binational website here that I listed at the bottom, binational.net. And that's where, when the Lake Michigan LAMP gets released for public comment this summer, that's where you'll be able to find it. And we'll make sure that, Michael will be, I'm sure, sending out email blasts when that's available for review. So as I mentioned, we are working on our 2020 to 2024 Lake Michigan LAMP. And again, it's going to identify a series of management actions that our partnership feels are important to implement Lakewide to address threats and impacts to the lake. And we've nested them under these, 5 themes of stressors. Again, it's nutrients and bacterial pollution, chemical contamination, habitat and native species, trying to prevent and contain invasive species, and being resilient to climate impacts in the lake. And I mentioned that the partnership is comprised of these agencies and these tribal partners, but we really need to bring in public input to our process. And we get a lot of good feedback on the draft LAMPs that we release to the public, and we get people who really care about the lakes, providing additional insights and information that we should be sure to include. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you all. And thanks to Michael and his creative team in the item communications department, we're really psyched about our new logo here that will be gracing our cover. So it's shown there at the bottom. But a big thanks to Michael for leading the many discussions that our partnership had and pulling together a new updated logo. So that was a fun thing this last summer. Okay, so one of the other things we do as a partnership to support the water quality agreement is to assist in the agreement's commitment to conduct intensive science and monitoring in the Great Lakes every year. So every 5 years, Lake Michigan gets an opportunity to have some resources devoted to it above and beyond what agencies already do in the lake to collect science and information needs that we have as lake managers. So we call this CSMI, that's the acronym. And again, it's an intensified effort, bringing together, it leverages, research vessels, funding cycles, scientists' time to really, conduct work above and beyond, like I said, routine agency programs to help answer the questions that we have as lake managers. So our group goes through a process of identifying priorities for a given field year, and then the science annex part of the agreement helps with coordination of the science and monitoring work to help answer our questions that we have and supply the data that we need to make decisions. So our intensive field year was to be 2020. A lot of that work had to get postponed because of COVID. So we are hoping to be able to have that work pick back up in 2021. One nice thing that's done under the agreement is that the results of the previous 5 years efforts are pulled together in a very, I think, user-friendly, document for managers, if you will. So we call these our CSMI reports. And if you are interested in reading the results and really the executive summary does a really nice job of summarizing what was learned in 2015, and that's available on the Illinois Indiana Sea Grant website. They pulled that report together for the science annex, and that website's listed there. But I think I will go through the CSMI cycle and then tell you a bit about our priorities for 2020. So our 5-year cycle, again, it's, there's an intensive field year that happens. Then after that, there's, the scientists, do their data analysis. They report out, to us, to other scientists at conferences, a lot of different ways the results get disseminated. But we use that information from the report out, the synthesis papers and other information to help feed into not just our Lakewide action and management plans, in the sense that they help us understand something about the lake, but also identifying, new science and information gaps that we, bring into our priority setting process for the next field year. So it's a 5-year rotational, as I mentioned. And for 2020, the types of questions we had, as lake managers, again, was, really having a need to further understand how, changing productivity in Lake Michigan due to invasives and, just declining nutrients could be impacting, the prey fish and the sport fish and the native species that we are so interested in, and that we need to have, in healthy conditions to meet all of our stakeholder needs. So again, understanding, the nutrient balance and the ability of the lake to support the prey fish was a big concern and a big need that we had for additional data. There was a desire to better understand the contributions of nutrients and chemicals to Lake Michigan from groundwater. Likewise, we are interested in being able to understand further the distributions of new and emerging contaminants in Lake Michigan's waters and the sediments. There was a priority related to understanding how land use changes could be altering how nutrients cycle, how carbon cycles, how contaminants like mercury cycle, and what impacts does this have for habitats and impacts on, the rare species or critical life stages that need to have healthy habitats. And lastly, there was one priority related to it was more of a social science theme, but it was, I think as lake managers, we were realizing that, to better manage the lake, it'd be really important to have, good information on, the values that different Lake Michigan stakeholder groups have to understand how they are using the lake and value the lake and its resources to better inform our management of them. So those were our 2020 CSMI priorities, and I'm looking forward to having many of these science and monitoring projects that were, kind of put on pause because of COVID pick back up this year. And then the last program I wanted to touch on was something that some of you may have heard about. It's a EPA and state and tribal program called the National Coastal Condition Assessment. And this program is designed to collect data that can be used to report out to Congress and to report out to the public on the state of our nation's waters. This particular assessment's for coastal waters. There are other nationwide assessments that look at rivers and streams, wetlands, and there's lakes. So these are done nationwide. And because we have the wonderful Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, we've been able to enhance some of the assessment work that happens in the Great Lakes to collect additional information. So these are surveys that happen once every 5 years. And again, 2020 was supposed to be our intensive field year for the coast. That's some of the 20 work got done. Some of it's continuing in 2021. But these are standard designs that, the same sort of sampling happens all across the country. And that allows the EPA Office of Water to roll up results into a nationwide assessment and a regional assessment. And we've been able to add some additional sampling, as I mentioned, so we can actually do report outs on a lake basis. So we could report on Lake Michigan water quality and compare it to the other lakes using similarly collected data. There are 4 indices of condition that are measured. There's a benefit condition, which is a measurement of the organism that live in the bottom sediments of the lake. So there's a benthos index, there's a water quality index, a sediment toxicity index, and a fish tissue contaminant index. So that's the nature of the data that are collected to support that kind of index reporting. And again, these are really broad scale snapshots of, looking at what percent of nearshore area is in good, fair, or poor condition. The other thing to mention on this map, you can see all the blue dots. Those represent the base monitoring design. So these are samples that would be collected even without the additional GLRI funding. This is what our headquarters funds for the lakes once every 5 years. And the sites in yellow are some of the enhancements we've been able to provide. And I'll talk a bit about those right here. So for 2020, EPA reached out to state and tribal partners, and we used the Lake Michigan Partnership that Michael and I are members of to get input on what sort of enhancements would states and tribes would like to have us do in Lake Michigan in 2020. And after some discussion, the issues that rose to the top were having the ability to report out on condition of nearshore areas of islands, nearshore areas of National Park Service properties in Lake Michigan, and Green Bay. So those were the 3 spatial enhancements that were implemented for 2020. So the states of Wisconsin and the states of Michigan, wanted to have some additional sampling done in Green Bay so they could do their own little mini NCCA for Green Bay and compare Green Bay water quality to open lake water quality. We heard from the states that having this island enhancement would be a really interesting thing to do. I don't think there's been a systematic assessment of island condition done throughout all the Lake Michigan islands, certainly not using the standardized design. So that was something that was of interest, and I think it has the potential to be performed in other lakes in future years as well, depending on what we learned from our Lake Michigan pilot. And the National Park Service islands enhancements, so the Indiana Dunes, the Sleeping Bear Dunes enhancements in Lake Michigan, those will be used to compare water quality to some sampling that National Park Service did in 2020 using this design. So I'm happy to report that for both the Lakewide monitoring and the enhancement monitoring, all the sites that were targeted for the Indiana Dunes and the coastlines of Indiana and Illinois and Michigan were able to be collected in 2020. So those field crews were able to get out. So Michael and I will be sharing those data when they're available. And some other enhancements that we brought to bear into this national design are things, again, looking at not just the spatial enhancements, but we have done some targeted assessment of embayments. So it's kind of a blurry figure here, but this is Traverse Bay area. We were able to do some enhancements in embayments there to look at, is the condition of embayments different than what we would expect for open areas of the coast? We've been able to collect data on harmful algal bloom toxins, on fish tissue contaminants, water quality conditions in the connecting rivers of the Great Lakes. That wouldn't have been included in the headquarters-based design. We've piloted benthic video assessment work. We use that to collect information that's not available when you just do a sediment grab. So, we are able to, sort of do habitat assessments and invasive species detections using our benthic video, and a really exciting citizen science project has come out of that work. Again, we do enhancements that, we get feedback on from states and other federal partners like Park Service. And in Lake Erie, we've actually been able to do a spatial enhancement where we've added just a lot of extra sampling to be able to report out on condition in Lake Erie, not just at the Lake Erie scale, but at the Western Basin, Central Basin, and Eastern Basin scale. Again, this ties back to our need to report out on conditions as they relate to phosphorus load reductions that were established under the Water Quality Agreement. So a couple of websites for you here where you can get access to these reports. There's a national report that's issued by headquarters. There's a Great Lakes technical report that's prepared for states, but it's also available on that national site. There's a series of journal articles that come out every year. And we use this information in the LAMPs to report out on nearshore condition. But keep in mind that since it's such a high level overview of lakewide condition, we also pull in a lot of important information from other, federal, tribal, state agency monitoring programs into the LAMP. We use information from the Coastal Zone Management Program to talk about nearshore condition. So it's one of the tools we use in our LAMPs to report out on the health of Lake Michigan. There's also a dashboard that's being kind of rolled out at the headquarters level that reports out on some of this data, and I'll show you a screen grab of that in a second. And we also pull in addition to the agency monitoring, we pull in a lot of the information from the State of the Great Lakes indicators that are assessed under the Water Quality Agreement to report on lake condition in our LAMP. And then here's just a screenshot of that NCCA dashboard. This is older data. It's the 2010 results. But again, you can use this to do an assessment at the Lake Michigan level, look at the percentage of coasts and how they're performing with regards to the different indices. And when the 2015 data and the 2020 data get loaded, we'll actually be able to calculate a long-term change in these over time. And that's what this national program is designed to do, assess change and improvements over time. Okay, so with that, I'll just wrap up and say that, I've kind of given an overview of some of this, high level work we do under the agreement, related to lakewide management. Spent a little bit of time talking about lakewide action and management plans. Again, these are, are kind of our blueprints for action based on these, all the input from the partnership agencies. And we really try to leverage a lot of agency work that's being implemented in each jurisdiction to improve lake condition. So this is a really good segue, I think, for the work that you're going to see Michael present, because he's going to go into more of a regional look at how the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement gets implemented at the state scale. So with that, Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Beth. I'm gonna go ahead and get the screen shared here. Okay, so like Beth said, one of the, she gave a great overview of the LAMP really on a lakewide scale, but, I'm sure everybody on this call is wondering, how does that apply to Indiana specifically? So I'm going to talk a little bit about those types of issues. So to focus in on the Lake Michigan Basin in Indiana, a lot of times I think we think of it as, the coastal zone in Lake Porter and the Port counties, but it actually includes portion of 10 Indiana counties. It includes the whole St. Joe River Basin here in northeastern Indiana. It actually covers more than 2,000 square miles, which is about 1/15 of the state. The area is pretty heavily populated. It's home to more than 1 in 7 Hoosiers, according to the 2010 census. Approximately 1 in 15 people in Indiana receive their drinking water from Lake Michigan, and it's full of really diverse landforms. We've got everything from urban and industrial, the beaches, to marshes and fens, forests, prairies, dune and swale. I put this picture down in the lower left to just kind of give an illustration from the western portion of the basin of how diverse areas can coexist right next to each other. Here you have a view looking west from Joyce Park Beach in East Chicago, and you can see some native grasses and things along the beachfront. And then off in the distance, you can see the ArcelorMittal Peninsula, which is heavily industrialized. So a lot of diversity, a lot of challenges actually through this whole basin. So IDEM has 4 main Lake Michigan programs, and these all fall under the auspices of the LAMP, really, which is the overarching program. But we've got the Lake Michigan Lakewide Action and Management Plan program, the Indiana Clean Marina and Clean Boating program, the Lake Michigan Beach Monitoring and Notification program, the Grand Calumet River Area of Concern Remedial Action Plan program. And all 4 of these programs are non-regulatory in nature, and they're fully supported through federal grant funding. The Lake Michigan LAMP program, which is first up, its goal is to really, in a few words, is to assess, protect, and restore the Lake Michigan ecosystem. And because that goal is so broad, it really is what makes this the overarching Lake Michigan program in Indiana. We work with, through the LAMP program, we work with a variety of regulatory and non-regulatory programs and stakeholders to achieve results. I'll be talking a little bit about that in a bit. And Beth mentioned through the Lake Michigan Partnership, we coordinate lake-wide management priorities. And we work with several partners, including the DNR Lake Michigan Coastal Program and the DNR Division of Fish and Wildlife in that coordination process as well. Beth already showed you the new logo that we've developed for the Lake Michigan LAMP program. The link is right below that. And then in the lower right-hand corner, just one more shot of the entire Great Lakes Basin with the entire Lake Michigan Basin shown in the brighter green color. So I mentioned partnerships and initiatives, and those of you who have been on the webinar series repeatedly have seen, I think, how many programs and initiatives touch on or partner with the LAMP to achieve those water quality and ecosystem objectives. In session 5, we had a session on the Indiana Department of Natural Resources Lake Michigan Coastal Program. So you can refer back to that webinar and slides for more information on that. We work closely with the Urban Waters Federal Partnership, which was mentioned which was the focus of session 3 of the webinar series. We've developed and are in the process of developing additional interpretive signage at the Indiana Dunes State Park to help reinforce and assist with public education on habitat and species and water quality issues. We've partnered with the Indiana Bureau of Motor Vehicles on our Clean Boater program to try to reach registered boaters through the Lake Michigan Basin, but also statewide. That was the subject of the second webinar, or part of the subject of the second webinar of this series. We work with MS4 entities, Municipal Separate Stormwater System, entities throughout the basin, which we saw in the last session, session 6. So we also have provided, unfortunately not this year due to COVID, but in years past, we've partnered with Grand Valley State University out of Michigan to bring the W.G. Jackson Educational Research Vessel in. And so members of the public can register to come out and conduct actual hands-on water quality sampling, which is just a really fabulous opportunity. I've done it myself. It's an extremely popular and useful program that we manage through the LAMP program. And finally, I mentioned before, we work with the Great Lakes Fishery Commission and our state fisheries folks on representation support to a lot of the Lake Michigan Committee, for example, that has oversight of fishery resources for the lake as a whole, and the Lake Michigan Technical Committee, which also provides a lot of oversight and a lot of technical research. So a lot of partnerships, a lot of initiatives. Really, that's the hallmark of the LAMP program. The Clean Marina program, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about this because it was the subject of a previous webinar session, but in brief, it's a voluntary environmental recognition program that has the goal of protecting the marina basin from the marina basins in Indiana from negative environmental impacts from boating. Boating is extremely popular in Indiana and the other Great Lakes states. Boating is a really valuable part of the economy, but it can have negative impacts such as transporting invasive species or causing pollution impacts. And so the marinas are obviously connected to the lake as a whole. And so this program is part of our Lake Michigan suite because it helps reduce pollutant impacts into Lake Michigan. It really encourages the implementation of pollution prevention best management practices, or BMPs for short. And we've talked a little bit about the Clean Boater program for individual boaters. Boaters can register to take a pledge that they're going to learn about and help to reduce the risk of causing adverse environmental impacts to our water bodies. So I'd encourage you to see session 2 if you're interested in learning more about that, posted to our website. Here's just a couple snapshots of the 5 designated clean marinas in the Lake Michigan Basin. We're really pleased to have so many marinas participating in the Lake Michigan Basin in Indiana. Our Lake Michigan Beach Monitoring and Notification Program. Unfortunately, it's just me presenting on an overview here. Our beach monitoring program coordinator is really worth listening to independently, and hopefully we'll be able to get her to do a session on this program separately in the future. But essentially, in a nutshell, it provides funding to local beach managers to monitor beach water quality by taking water samples and analyzing those samples for fecal indicator bacteria, and then turning around and alerting the public of poor beach water quality conditions. The monitoring occurs at approximately 23 program beaches across the Lake Michigan shoreline from Memorial Day to Labor Day. That monitoring is daily at most of those beaches. And then the signs and online notifications are posted at the Beach Guard site, which is at the bottom of the screen. You can see a screenshot of Beach Guard in the upper left-hand corner and a shot of the signage at the local beaches. So if you've ever wondered what those signs are at the Lake Michigan beaches, now you know a little bit about that. One thing I would like to note is that we're in the process um, of putting in place an upgrade to the beach guard system. So watch for that through 2021. Here are I mentioned 23 beaches from 2020. That number can fluctuate a little bit from year to year, but in general, it's pretty consistent. Those beaches go all the way from the city of Hammond all the way to the Duneland and Long Beach areas at the roughly at the Indiana-Michigan border. The last program that I mentioned was the Grand Calumet River Indiana Harbor Ship Canal Area of Concern, or AOC, Remedial Action Plan program. We call this the RAP program for short. The goal of the RAP program is to achieve restoration of 14 impaired uses of the waterway and surrounding ecosystem. Like the LAMP, this program works with a variety of regulatory and non-regulatory programs and stakeholders to achieve its result. In fact, we have an advisory committee comprised of a wide variety of groups. We have federal agencies such as EPA. We have fellow state agencies such as the DNR. We have local municipal representatives, representatives from industry, from environmental organizations. All of those come together in the Citizens Advisory for the Remediation of the Environment, or our CARE Committee. And we typically meet monthly, most months, and just basically that group provides input to the restoration efforts ongoing in the AOC. One thing that I think is pretty interesting about the AOC program, or the RAP program, is that it really complements the LAMP in a lot of ways. So like Beth mentioned, the LAMP addresses environmental issues impacting the Great Lakes water quality on a lakewide scale, whereas the RAPs, and this is true across the Great Lakes Basin, they're really addressing legacy environmental issues that are impacting water quality locally within these local AOCs. And for those who are interested, we don't really have a direct RAP program logo or anything to show. A lot of times we use our CARE Committee logo. So you can see that on the right-hand side of your screen. The direct link to our RAP program page is below that. You can go there and read additional information about the RAP program. And then for those who are interested, the area of concern includes four communities: Hammond, Whiting, East Chicago, and Gary. And a map of the designated area of concern is shown in the shaded area that's in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. So it goes from the Illinois-Indiana state line out into Lake Michigan, over to the Marquette Park Lagoons in Gary, and then down along a groundwater divide, the Tallston Beach Ridge line. So in through Gary and Hammond. So AOC Restoration, I mentioned that. There are basically three main pathways, even though there are other projects and avenues involved as well. The first main tier or pathway is to reduce exposure to legacy sediment contaminants. This is mostly done through dredging and or capping of areas of contaminated sediments in the AOC waterways, similar to what you can see in the upper left-hand portion of the screen. We're also working to restore approximately more than 1,000 acres of habitats, wetland, dune and swale, and other habitats impacted by invasive species. And finally, controlling ongoing sources of chemical and biological contaminants. And as we conduct those pillars of restoration within the AOC waterways and surrounding environments, what we're doing is addressing environmental concerns leading to those impairments, those beneficial use impairments. And then when all of those concerns are addressed, then we'll be able to delist the AOC from the Great Lakes areas of concern. So a couple of other photographs in the picture, I think, really help to illustrate these. In the upper right, you can see the restoration of Roxana Marsh in East Chicago, which is an emergent marshland that has important birding habitat, as well as for other species in East Chicago. You can also see in the lower left an example of a project that was that's being implemented through our regulatory programs that helping with AOC restoration as well. And then in the lower right-hand corner is an example of field crews who are working to treat invasive species at state and locally managed lands throughout the AOC. So a tremendous amount of work going on in this local area that helps improve the lake ecosystem and water quality lakewide. So these are programs that Beth already touched on. Outreach and reporting are really important. We put a lot of thought into getting the word out about these programs and about the initiatives. So these are some examples of different outreach items that have been constructed in the past. All of the outreach items typically link to the web page so that it encourages people when they look at them to learn more about these programs. And in many cases, we provide additional information on the outreach items that might be helpful, such as on our fish ruler, which provide information about things like preventing invasive species impacts during boating. And I'd just like to, this is going to be a little bit choppy here, but I'd like to share with you a public service announcement style video that ITEM staff did, ITEM LAMP program staff did just recently in order to help improve water quality at our beaches. So hang on just one moment. I'm going to share that. All right, hopefully everybody can see this and hear this okay. Give me some indication, somebody in the chat, will you, if you're not able to hear this. I'm going to play this video. It's about 2 minutes long.
We all know Lake Michigan's beaches are amazing places.
However, getting sick while swimming or boating can ruin cleanup day. It's a great use of a few
are amazing places.
However, getting sick while swimming or boating can ruin your whole day.
That's why IDEM and local beach managers post signs at the beach and information on the internet, providing you with the latest information on water quality at your favorite beaches.
But safe, clean beaches start with you. No one comes to enjoy the litter.
So commit to leaving the beach better than you found it. Carry out everything you bring to the beach, and maybe even a little something extra you didn't bring. Consider it your good deed for the day.
If you can't carry it out, be sure to throw it out in a designated trash can.
And remember to recycle those empty cans and bottles.
Pets can make a good day even better, but no one wants to swim with pet waste.
Yuck. So before you bring Fido or Mr. Whiskers to the beach, remember the following rules.
Make sure pets are allowed at the beach in the first place. You don't want to be that person.
And when your pet goes, don't delay. Pick it up and throw it away.
Speaking of animals, have you seen those cute birds hanging out at the beach? Why not share a few French fries with them?
Well, once you feed one, they'll call 50 of their friends, and then they'll all be begging you and your neighbors for food.
And if begging doesn't work, they might just steal.
Not to mention, the more you feed them, the more likely it is one of them will drop a present or two on you. Gross.
And imagine if that present gets into the water everyone is swimming in, contaminating it with bacteria.
So don't be the troublemaker that gets the beach closed for everyone. Keep beach wildlife wild.
Oh, and one last thing, sign up for a beach cleanup day. It's a great use of a few hours, and you'll be doing your part to help your favorite beach.
And you might even make a new friend in the process.
On behalf of your local beach.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
So I realize that that's a little bit lighthearted, but sometimes, we found that having some of those more fun, lighthearted process or outreach materials can really help get the word out and help change behavior. And so, this is kind of a lighthearted way to try to encourage behavioral change around a serious issue. So I'm going to go pull up my slide deck again here and pick up where I left off. So I mentioned this, we also participate in a number of outreach events. So at many festivals or fairs or water quality events that take place around the Lake Michigan Basin here, you'll likely find one of our booths telling people information about the Lake Michigan programs and providing an opportunity for people to learn a little bit more. So with that is all that I had. So at this point, Beth or I will take any questions that folks have.
I just got to say that video was really fun. Great job. Really, really. You must have hired some professional actors to do the voiceovers.
Something like that.
Yeah. No, really, that was really great.
So if anybody has any questions, I'm going to go check the chat real quick to see if there's anything in there.
It's mostly just me. I don't think there's any questions.
Okay. It looks like just some comments in general here, no questions. Really, if anybody has any questions about anything that we've talked about today, feel free. You should be able to unmute yourself, or you can post a question in the chat.
While people are typing, I'll mention just how fortunate, Glencoe feels to have strong support from IDEM and IDNR on the Lake Michigan partnership. And I was telling Michael yesterday when I saw his slide deck, I think that the 4 programs you're highlighting here are just really nice examples of implementing Lakewide management at the regional scale, and just showing how your programs, the LAMP really strives to, leverage, it really is the makeup of all of our, our own agency programs. And I think this is such a nice illustration of how those all nest under the common objective to restore the lake, but implementation happens domestically and locally. So really nice job.
So Beth, I actually have a question that I think a lot of people probably would have. So like you mentioned that there'd be an opportunity for public comment on the lamp coming up and talked a little bit about that. But I guess what happens after that, after the lamp is finalized? Are you able to talk a little bit about how the partnership proceeds after that?
Yeah, so really good question. After we have a final approved lamp, our agencies go about their business of, implementing our actions. And what we're responsible for as a partnership then is to start accumulating success stories, tracking implementation so that we're able to report back at the end of those 5 years, how did we work together to accomplish, programs in the lake, and do we see any improvements in lake condition that we can report out in our next 5-year lamp? So, I didn't really go into the different chapters in the lamp, but a big part of that is, assessing the state of the lake. And it's hopeful that, through, ongoing, as you mentioned, regulatory and non-regulatory programs, the additional science and monitoring that happens in CSMI years, combined with, routine monitoring, that we're able to, show we're making a difference, show all of the programs that we're harnessing. And, this really is our, our strategic plan under the water quality agreement for Lake Michigan, and, showing how all the partners work together. So it's the reporting out on success, implementation tracking, and just like what you've been doing through all your programs, communicating with the public, why it's important to, protect and restore Lake Michigan, to continue to have these, ecosystem services that we depend on for our, livelihoods and, recreation. So I think it's, continuing to, communicate. And I think, as a partnership, we can, I think probably going forward, there's been such good infusing of new ideas for how we can report out broader and better. So I think, we can probably as a team develop some new ways to get information out about the collective impact of our work.
Beth, there's a couple of questions that have come in. The first one is, do either of you have a favorite success story from the Lake Michigan area? That's a hard question. There's so much great work going on. Honestly, it's hard to pick one.
Well, I'll mention just one, just because it's fresh in my mind from your presentation, and I did put it in the chat, but when those bald eagles, when we got report back, I think it was from either a contractor crew or maybe it was someone from your agency, when you guys reported back to us that bald eagles had nested at Roxana Marsh, and it was probably, I think it was pretty immediate. It was not very long after that work was completed, the remediation work. I mean, that was so exciting. And, it lit around the office like wildfire. And for a long time, anytime we drove to Michigan to meet with folks, we always would go by Roxana Marsh on that part of the highway. And, we were just so proud to see, field crews out and the remediation happening and the big GLRI sign. So just the fact that was ongoing right where the public can see a benefit, like it was so visible. And then to hear that, you were getting these instant, responses from the ecosystem, that's just one that sticks out to me, that it really, those AOC programs really are great speaking points for all the combined work being done to address the lakes.
Yeah, I would say for me, and I know we're up against time here, so if folks have to jump off, feel free. But for me, I think since I work on both LAMP and RAP program issues, really a lot of what I'm involved with is with the RAP program. And I think for me, one of the things that is a real success story, or that I'm most proud of, is our efforts to do the restoration on 1,000 acres of protected lands within Lake County. And, one of those areas is Roxana Marsh. And the reason is that, the individual properties actually work together because, native species like turtles or birds, they'll move between habitats. And so if you have these restored, highly functioning areas within close proximity to each other, that is just a really helpful thing for native species. And there's a lot of good, high quality habitats within the AOC, even though it has that moniker. And so working on that has been a real privilege for me personally. I guess we had another question. Do you have any hopes or concerns with the administration change regarding the current programs to protect the Great Lakes regarding, or particularly Lake Michigan? Beth, I have some thoughts on that, but I'm sure you do as well. So.
Well, I'll just speak really generally with a GLRI focus. You know, we've had 10 years of really strong bipartisan support for GLRI. So, you know, I'm excited about, you know, working with the new administration. I would expect we'd have, you know, continued strong support there because, you know, we've just had, you know, just so many accomplishments have been made under GLRI, and Congress really seems to be supportive and has, you know, reauthorized it for, you know, $330 million for fiscal year 21. So that's really exciting. So I hope that strong support continues. And yeah, just, you know, if anything, maybe we'll see some increased emphasis just potentially on, you know, looking at, you know, climate change impacts to the lakes under this different administration. But it just remains to be seen what their focus is going to be and who, you know, becomes the regional administrator for Region 5.
Yeah, that's funny, Beth. That was almost exactly what I was thinking. I mean, GLRI has been, you know, if you look back at one of the key contaminated sediment remediation programs, the Great Lakes Legacy Act, that has been around since 2002. The Beach Act that funds the Lake Michigan Beach Program, that's been around since about 2000. You know, GLRI has been around since 2010. It was just reauthorized. The president just signed it into law today, the reauthorization through 2026. So I guess from my perspective, I've seen a lot of really strong support for these programs as well that crosses political boundaries. And it's really one of the great things about this area is I think it really unites a lot of people, the importance of these areas, which are really more like inland seas rather than lakes. So. All right, those are great questions. Any other questions?
Thanks for inviting me to be a part of your series. I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to going back and reviewing some of the recordings. And I'll just put a plug in. I would love to see a beach presentation because I think it would be really, really fun. If it's anything like that video I just saw.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for attending and for the great questions. And Beth, thanks for being willing to you know, participate here. Everybody, you know, I will shut it down. Thank you, everybody.
Happy New Year.